obviously, as you know, that when we interact with patients, there's a lot of information that comes through. And each of this information has its own significance, either from a clinical pathway or better care for the patient, or it is in the form of maybe a faster resolution to a patient's problem, and so on and so forth. So, therefore, each entity, when it's born and when it is finished as in its transformation being complete, is very amenable to a typical neural network, machine learning kind of a principle, right? And I think the foundation, therefore, for us, or maybe when we were looking at maybe evaluating bots and evaluating such options to kind of bring in, we basically were looking at those which can bring in the similarity in the thought process. That's one of the most important and fundamental principles on which we kind of looked at Nuacem, and therefore the budget and the entire suite of products that you bring in there. Few things that we liked when we started engaging with Nuacem were, and we actually tried our own platform, we realized our issues there. We looked at a third party, we realized maybe that, for example, especially on aspects around small talk, there was not too much of a flexibility, therefore leading to us being a little rigid. And typically when conversational bots are considered, typically it should not be rigid. They should be able to take in a colloquial input, should be able to give should be able to identify an intent, and should be able to therefore generate an output. So those are some of the things that were taking us towards the Nuacem platform. When we were evaluating options or platforms, right, they were typically coming forth. For example, we looked at and their correlated bot and a few others, and realization was that they were only bot-centric AI platforms. That means what they were giving to me was a chatbot or a conversation bot. But for me, as an organization, or maybe from a future standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, that I'm generating a huge amount of data. Every patient touch point for me is almost between 80 to 220 data points that are coming in. And I may have millions of such transactions happening. For me to be able to make sense, to be able to learn from them, to be able to reapply them in our systems to make our systems more cognitive and intelligent, and be able to do automatic responses thereof, required a platform which will enable me to go beyond just the chatbot to apply the core principles of AI and ML and NLP. And I think that's where is what we thought of the future alignment that we saw with Nuacem. We never base our investments in the current situation. We base our investment for what we look in the future. One of the things that we looked at from a platform standpoint, will this technology be able to offer me that? And how effective it will be able to offer? And what is their roadmap? Most important, what is their roadmap in terms of which all languages they intend to cover as they go ahead? And I think basically Nuacem AI got good ticks, or basically solid, confident ticks on most of those areas, and therefore I believe we took the call. So obviously one of the first things that we kind of done, and if you look at the transaction sets here, it has significantly started impacting that query calls, because any FAQs, any condition information, any information about coupons, discounts, vouchers, and whatever, any information about the doctor and the price, or the service on the price, or maybe a lab and the lab's price, are things which are easily delivered through the chatbot. Yeah, that from the month of July onward, we've kind of seen almost like a 20% up on terms of my digital adoption. That's a very important aspect, because the 20% up there, coupled with the fact that we grew from around 40 cities to about 60 cities in that same time, right? Which meant that obviously the number of transactions hitting in that 4% up, or whatever, the 4% net move from digital to from physical to digital, or from voice to digital, is a direct indication of both the cost saving that happened from number of agents who were staffed at the call center, and I was able to take in the increase in the number of calls coming in by pushing a lot of them onto the digital platform. So that's one very important statistic that kind of been brought in there. What I liked most was, I liked maybe the system documentation. I liked maybe the ease of access to both the senior management and the technical management, so as to be able to solve our problems and queries, and a fairly flexible operating model. I think that was an important aspect, especially because of the healthcare we had issues regarding maybe providing VPN accesses and so on and so forth. Some of those were addressed through a series of dialogues rather than having to go through maybe any kind of a contractual element. So I think those were some of the important aspects. We were looking at an enterprise grade platform. So when I look at an enterprise grade platform, what it means is that it brings in an adequate balance between open source technologies, because at some point in time exit is an important aspect, plus brings in a set of significant enterprise level controls, right? And the intent was that, is there anything that is going to do it? And I thought maybe through the evaluation that we went through a very detailed technical evaluation on the platform, our realization was that yes, it kind of matches, and therefore I think it's definitely a referral. It's definitely a referral that we would want to do for the particular for Botjet or the whole suite of the Nuacem platform.